Hi friends, we are back in our Greenway Court Theater world, right? We have arrived at this point in the process, okay? There is like a weird little shadow of the drawing underneath. I'm not sure what that's about, but we're going to just ignore it for now. And we're going to drop in seating risers and audience chairs, and there are those overhead beams that we're going to draw in, so we'll add in that framing over top, and we'll talk a little bit about a couple of other pieces as we go. Then we'll create a ground plan and a section view that you'll export as a PDF on this project. So let's get into it. There is a PNG file that I was able to locate, and that is a picture of the seating setup at the time of this show. So that has some additional information for us in terms of how these seating risers are actually going to look, because I was noticing there's a lack of information on the drawing. So we're going to use that as our guide and set ourselves up to do these riser sections here on the side that go all the way connected up to the stage, and then we'll clean up this center riser section. It looks like it's a little bit wider in the actual room as compared to the drawing. So we'll make those adjustments and we'll add in some seats and some risers. So I'm going to start by creating a new layer, a new design layer for this audience. So we're going to call this audience seating. And for clarity for us, and just to make it a little bit simpler, we are going to move this whole design layer down to the level of the audience floor, right? So if you remember when we made the stage, we built it at the 0 line of the drawing. We can actually take this audience seating layer and set it with a different bottom Z, right? So everything that comes in on the audience seating will be at that other level, right? So to do that, I right click on audience seating over here and I go into the edit menu, and then I'm going to look at where it says elevation, and that's relative to the ground plane, and I'm going to set that at -1 foot 6 inches. And now that whole layer will just move down the 1 foot 6 that we would want it to. So that's going to be giving us the correct bottom floor for that area, okay? The next thing I'm going to do is look at these risers. So when I look at the actual drawing that I would be tracing, I'm getting 4 foot 10, which is a weird measurement, and then I'm getting from the wall 2 foot 10 and 5/8, and I don't really love either of those. And they don't match up with the dimensions that I'm seeing on this drawing. So over here, I see that there's 3 feet and then 4 feet, and then there's a space before the actual built out stage begins. So I'm going to, although there's also no steps here on the side, we're going to ignore that for now. I'm going to just use this 3 feet and 4 feet as my reference point and create a 4 foot platform that goes all the way to the stage, and it looks like it's connected at the same height as the stage. And then I will come back out and figure out what else is going on. It looks like these are also 4 foot by 8 foot platforms. So that leads me to believe that it's a 4 foot by 8, 16, what's another 8 feet after that? 24 total. So let's see if that makes sense if I were to draw it. And then we'll have actually a more accurate representation of the seating than what's in this drawing here. Because I was like looking at this and it was like, this does not match up with my memory of this space. So luckily I was able to find that other drawing. So I'm going to start. I'm going to make sure I'm in my audience seating level. And I'm going to just start by creating a rectangle. Oh no, I'm in not my rectangle tool. Hit keyboard shortcut 4 or pick up your rectangle tool. And I'm going to create a rectangle that is 4 feet wide and that is -24 feet long, right? So that's much bigger than what was given, but it actually looks correct compared to the space. And we're going to extrude that the full 1 foot 6 inches so that it is the same height. And then I'm going to do that maneuver where I place something and then I have it move. So I'm going to place it into this corner and then I'm going to shift it over the 3 feet that I would expect it to be. So I'm going to just snap it into this corner and then move command X offset 3 feet. Okay, so that lines up pretty nicely. Gosh, I'm just going to turn this off for a moment and make sure that that's still true. If I snap it into that corner, move 3 feet. Okay. So that lines up pretty well with the vague echo, right, of where that riser is, although obviously it's extending much further. I think that that is good, and we'll mirror that across to the other side of the stage. So I'm going to just turn off my additional Greenway court drawing for a moment. I'm going to select my riser here, and then I'll use my mirror tool to mirror it to the other side. So now I have one of those risers on each side. Let's look back here now. It looks like, I bet that this is 16 feet, right? And then it looks like there are 3 platforms across in a row behind it for that, that one step up. And then this looks like, and it looks like that might be 3 feet and this might be 4 feet. So I think that's how we'll build this other seating bank. So I don't know that we need Greenway court drawing in order to see what we're doing. So I'm going to just move back to this audience seating layer. And I'm going to start by tracing this. Yeah, we want that only to be 16 feet, right? And actually, because this is just distracting, right? I think that this measurement to the front of a chair is 3 feet. So I bet that this measurement relationship is okay, but I'm not sure about the rest of it. And I don't have additional measurements on this sketch. So we may shift the whole thing away a little bit as we go. For now, though, I'm going to just center this on the center of the room. Oh boy. On the center line. And then I'm going to turn off the rest of this Greenway court drawing for the moment, just to try and get a good, clean start. It looks to me like these are closer together, so instead of being a 4-foot deep platform, I'm actually going to make it a 3-foot platform. Then I'm going to duplicate it, and I haven't actually extruded it yet, but I'm going to just duplicate it. I'm going to move my control button to the center here, and then if I just add 8 feet, it'll extend that out so that it has that additional width. And it does seem like we're going to want to shift this whole thing back a little bit from that front edge. And then I'm going to duplicate that again, and this back one is going to be 4 feet instead of 3 feet. And because this is to the 3 feet to the front of the chair, right? So if I make a little box that's just a random width minus 3 feet, click, right? Then I still need a chair's width. So I am going to bet that this whole riser configuration sits closer to this beam position. So I'm going to just select these 3. I'm going to move them like to here. Oh, I don't want to change the midpoint though. I'll just move them to there. Is that big enough for a chair? Probably, right? You think? I bet it will be. Okay, so let's say that for now. Now I'm going to turn off that other... Oops, I grayed it. That's fine. We can turn it off all the way. Okay. Yes, go ahead and save that for me. Cool. Okay, so that's a little bit better. If you want to add in these cute little diagonal wedges, please do. That would be great. I think that it would help us to visualize this. But in the meantime, let's look at it. It looks like this is 1 step up. So I'm going to extrude that 6 inches just to match the other steps that we have. So 6 inches for that one. This one is 2 steps up. So we'll extrude that to 12 inches. And then the back one, there's another step in between. So let's make it, instead of 1'6", let's make it 2 feet so that it's a little bit higher, and then we'll have a 6-inch step in between. So let's extrude that to 2 feet. Okay, great. And then over here we have some little steps that we'll put in, and then we'll put in these little steps on the ends of the rows. So over here, it looks like there's just like a little baby step just a little 2-step unit that's maybe 2 feet wide. So let's go ahead and draw that. So if I'm a baby 2-foot wide step unit, it is possible to make steps using the stairs tool here in Vectorworks, but because we're just making 2 of them, it doesn't really make sense to dig into that right now. So let's make this 1 foot by 2 feet. Yeah, just a little baby 2 foot wide step. And we're going to extrude this 1 foot, and then we'll duplicate it. And we'll extrude this guy. We'll make that 6 inches. Okay. And then I'm going to do a similar thing for this little step here. Maybe that's also a 2 foot wide step. Let's just take that then. So we'll just take one of these, duplicate this one. We're going to bring it over here and rotate it into place on that center riser. So now we have one little step there, and it needs to have a different bottom Z. Its bottom Z needs to be the top of this riser. So let's make its bottom Z 1 foot. And I'm going to mirror that across to the other side. So now we got 2 over here, and I'll mirror this across to the other side as well. Great. The other thing that we know we're going to need in our riser configuration is a railing to go behind the chairs on these side sections because they're 1.5 feet over the ground. We would also need railings across the back here. I'm going to just do, as a demonstration, 1 railing over on this side so you can see how the railing tool works. So if you come over into your Theater tool sets, you click on the little stage. One of those options is the railing tool. So we can click on that railing tool, and I'm just going to go to here, right? So I'm just going to snap to like that intersection. I'll hold my shift key to make sure I'm going vertical. Double click, and I have a railing now. Ooh, amazing. That railing is on the ground, and I actually want it to be at the top of that riser. So I'll just give it a bottom Z of 1 foot 6 inches. And that will make it go across the top of that riser, right? Perfect. Okay, cool. So that's also something I'm going to mirror across to the other side because I want railings on both sides of my risers. And we'll leave the center section open just because it'll be clearer for us as we work on that. Okay, so now we are going to start on the seating for our audience. So if you come in over here, you'll pick up this seating section tool. If you hover over it, it'll say, I'm a seating section tool. And it's going to open up with this sort of magic convert mode where it converts any shape into a seating section, right? So if you were to pre-draw the rectangle that your seats go inside of, you could use this magic wand to turn it into a seating section. I haven't done that, so I'm going to just use the rectangle mode to draw the rectangle of where the chairs should go, okay? And I'm going to start here in this corner. I can delete in front where those chairs would be, and I'm going to just give myself a nice big chunk of space. Then I'm going to click again. So now you'll see these horizontal lines. Those indicate the rows of chairs, okay? So I'm going to find the midpoint here. And then I'm going to snap to the midpoint there, and that should make rows of chairs that look directly at the stage, okay? You can also adjust that later if you don't quite click it correctly, but what we're hoping for are 2 rows of chairs here, okay? The chair that is the default is this Event Chair 1. So if you select that, Event Chair 1 will look like this. This theater actually uses this kind of like chair that is for banquets and whatever. That is their audience seat. So we can leave that alone in our case. In other theaters, like our experimental theater, we would open up this little menu and then go find in the seat symbols this event padded theater seat, which is going to look more like the chairs that you would actually have in our theaters. But for the purposes of our adventure, this Event Chair 1 is actually just fine, with the exception of it has a bright blue seat, which is obnoxious, but I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. So, all right, so now we have these 2 rows of chairs. Great. we want to leave our seat spacing at 0. We're going to put the chairs right next to each other, but we're going to adjust our row spacing. And since I don't know how deep the chair is, like I haven't measured this symbol, I'm going to change it to measure from front leg to front leg. And that means that it's going to show you, edge to edge as opposed to from the back to the front. And then I'm going to change that row spacing from 2 feet to 4 feet because I have a 4-foot riser that I'm working with here. Okay. The other thing I'm going to set up in this settings is where it says total or per row for the rise. Per row, we know our first row of chairs is on the floor and our second row of chairs is 1 foot 6 inches above the floor. So we'll use that as our per row rise. So I'm going to just say, okay. Now it has created these chairs and it has set them kind of in the middle of wherever, which is strange, but fine. And now I can pick up this seating section with my regular old cursor key, right? And move it maybe not all the way up to the railing, but towards the back of that area, okay? So now when I hit Shift C and I go into a 3D mode, I'm going to see my 2 rows of chairs, okay? Most of this is good. The part that is weird is there's still chairs that are on top of that stairs, so I would want to delete that chair out of the way. And then I hate the fact that these chairs are blue because it's very distracting to me, okay? But they are at least at the correct heights, it looks like, relative to the ground. So I'm going to just come in and Command 5, Command 5, get back up here. So if I double click on this seating section, it's going to let me edit. I want to click away from all of the seats because when I first click, they're all selected. And then I can delete the one chair I don't need. Then I can exit seating. It's going to say, hey, do you want to modify the boundary or leave the boundary? It doesn't really matter to me, but I'm going to just modify the boundary. I'm going to say, sure, go ahead. You want to modify your boundary? Go ahead. You do that. Okay. And when we did this show in here, I think we also deleted these seats just because they had kind of terrible sight lines, but we'll leave them here for now. Then the other thing we're going to do is turn off this arrow that's just telling me the direction the chairs are pointing in. So when I click on my seating section, I can scroll down here and I can find the thing where it says display focus line. And I can delete that. Uncheck that box. So that'll hide that focus line. Okay, great. I'm going to just shift and down arrow key to nudge and sort of center that up so it looks pretty good. Cool. Great. Okay. They have an additional chair up here. You can add that in, but I'm going to just leave it like this for now because it's not like I'm actually doing a show in this space. Okay. So I think that is pretty nice. I can just mirror this set of chairs across to the other side, and that's probably what I'll do for today. It does sometimes make exports do weird things to mirror a seating section of chairs, but we're going to just go ahead and do it because we got other stuff to do today. So I'm going to let that be that way. And then over here we have these 4 rows of chairs, 1 row on the floor, and I think we got to move even further back. We'll see once we get the chairs in order to make sure we have that 3-foot clearance in front of those chairs over here. So we're going to go ahead and do these 4 rows of chairs. The back row looks like it's on a wider riser. It looks like it's on a 4-foot riser, and that's what we drew. So we may need to shift that one back row back a little bit more than what is generated by the seating section tool. But we'll come back for that in a minute. So let's go ahead and pick up our seating section tool again. And I'm going to just draw something that looks like it's going to cover all the way to as far as in front of a chair would be, right? And then I'm going to play the same game where I like pick a midpoint on something and then I pick a midpoint that's in front of it, okay? So in this case, I want front leg to front leg. I'm going to give it that 3-foot spacing and then we can come back in and adjust the back row because the rest of them are fine. We may just need to do, wasn't this weird? It is weird because the first 2 rows are one set of rise spacing and then the next 2 rows are different. let's try and build it with 6-inch rises, and that'll at least make the front 2 correct, and then I'll see if I can shift the back 2 rows independently. So per row, 6-inch rise, because we know at least the front 2 rows would be coming 6 inches up each, or the front 3. And then we're going to say, okay, and it's made this whole set of chairs that is way downstage of where I want it to be. So I'm going to slide it back so that that front row is kind of sitting at that front edge of, golly gee. Okay, something like that, right? So those 3 are now in the correct relative position. We will adjust the seats inside, and we'll move this back row back a little bit more. But overall, I think that that is correct. Now I'm going to double click inside and delete some of the chairs I don't need. There are 2 options here, right? We could use what's called the aisle tool to sort of clear the aisles. I don't usually do that just because I have less control over where the chair itself goes. So I usually leave that one out. If that little triangle were here, then these 2 chairs would stay. So I'm going to let them stay for now. And then I'm going to delete 2 chairs there and 1 chair here, right? And then I'm going to shift and center this group of chairs. Right? And it'll let you just kind of nudge a group of chairs like that to be more centered. And then for my back row, that's not centered though. What did I do? That's better. Okay. And then for my back row, I'm just going to shift the whole set of chairs back to the back. Ooh, too far. Yeah. Okay. So each of these is at a separate height. You can see that over here. So this first row is starting at 1'6", which I don't want it to. I don't know why that's on that at that baseline height. So I'm going to make the Z for that 0. I'm going to make this one 6 inches as the bottom Z for that step worth of chairs. What was the height on this riser? 1'6". And then this one I think was 2'6". So let's see if that turned out correctly. Exit seating, and we can let it modify its boundary. And let's see if all of that is now correct. Did that make sense? Nope, they're all sitting inside there now. Weird. So maybe it did need to start at 1'6" for it to sit correctly. Interesting. Interesting, she says. But it looks like our back rows are floating. So I'm going to just quickly turn off that noise for a second so I can see whether my chairs are sitting correctly. And it looks like my first 2 rows are sitting correctly and my back 2 rows are not sitting correctly, right? See how they're floating? So I can just make each of these back 2 rows go down 6 inches and then I should be in the right spot. So I'm going to just align myself to this right view, double click on my seating. Oh, nope, it doesn't let me do that. That's okay. And we'll just subtract 6 inches on this section, and we'll subtract on that section. And let's see if that's now all lined up. Yeah, so that's much better. So now those bottom of those chairs. Okay, so now all of my chairs are correctly lined up. Great. And that all looks pretty good. If I'm you, I'm going to come in and make a little triangle wedge so that it matches in that visual drawing that I added. Right, so I'm going to make a little triangle wedge kind of dealio into each of these corners. But overall, we now have audience chairs, We have risers for them to sit on, and they're all at the correct heights. So my next move is going to be to add in the overhead beams, and then I'll create an export of this drawing. But I'm going to do that in a separate video. So let's pause here for now, and we'll come back and we'll add in overhead beams, and then we will export a plan and section of the drawing.